You want me to introduce you?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out to Book and Puppet. We're honored to have, is it a launch event?
It is.
It's a launch event for Ruth Knafo Setton after all this time. The book is out, Zigzag Girl. Woo! You were here last October.
Yes, I
talking about
was.
this, right? So it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's been a while, but here it is, finally.
And Lee Upton and Kate Brandis are here to chat with Ruth about the process of writing a mystery, right? And I'm going to turn over to Lee and to Kate.
And Kate is our...
I will be the MC for the event. So first of all, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. We're delighted to have you here. So, yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Am I coming through well? Okay, excellent. So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, and I'm going to let Ruth start, and we're just going to talk about, a little synopsis of who we are and what we write, and then we'll do a very short reading, each of us. We'll start with Ruth again for that, and then I have some questions that we'll chat about, so that will be the hour or so. So do you want to start, Ruth, with the introduction?
Sure. So I'm Ruth Knafo Setton. I used to teach at Lafayette, right here, for years with Lee Upton.
I just don't want you to have to worry about it.
Yeah, great, thank you. Can you hear me, everybody? So I've taught creative writing for many years at Lafayette and then at Lehigh for many years, and now writing full time. But this is my first mystery novel, and I've loved mysteries since I was a kid. I always wanted to write mysteries. But what sparked this one was that I started studying magic with magicians, and some of the world's greatest magicians, like Teller, Jeff McBride. I didn't study with David Copperfield, but I got to attend private magician-only workshops with him and other magicians. And as I was studying magic, I started realizing, and somehow it worked together to go to Atlantic City, and which could be called the anti-magic city. But I grew up going down the Jersey Shore and going to Atlantic City, and I love this city. I loved it before, I saw it before casinos, before everything, and I've always felt it has soul. It has something, it has a life to it, and I didn't understand why until one day everything sort of crystallized when I went into a haunted theater on the boardwalk, the Atlantic City boardwalk. And that and the combination of magic is what made Zigzag Girl turn into a novel. So it took some years, research and writing, but it's a story of murder, magic, and mystery set in Atlantic City and the Pine Barrens. And it stars a female magician who has to solve the murder of one of her dear friends and co-performers in a show that's going to go on this haunted theater on the boardwalk. But in the process of solving the mystery and trying to find the killer, she realizes that there are connections to her own past, which is kind of mysterious, and she finds herself sort of falling for the prime suspect in the murder investigation. So that's kind of a summary of Zigzag Girl. And I hope you will, look at it and enjoy it.
Okay, I just want to say how wonderful this is. I mean, I just sped through it. I was, reading late at night, and I just couldn't get enough of it. It has everything, and it's so daring and ambitious, and it has an opening that is absolutely chilling. And Ruth, you are such a divinely kind person, but somehow you allowed the inner demon to come forward. So I can't say enough about it, and how really fascinatingly, the construction is so fascinating, and the daring of it. And it's so exciting too. I think that Ruth did so much lived research. It's one thing to read about magicians, but Ruth had herself put into a straitjacket
Yes.
and managed to get out of it in front of 30 professional magicians. She's done it all, and she won't tell how it's done.
No.
So
Cannot.
I'm just so pleased to be here with Ruth, and pleased to be with Kate, and the beautiful, tender focus of Kate's work with its ecological awareness and scientific awareness, and all of that within a kind of emotional world that is very real immediately. I'll tell you a little bit about my work. Wrongful is in many ways about being wrong. There are so many characters who get things wrong. And I think when I was first writing the mystery, or had the idea for the mystery, I thought about how many times in my life I've been wrong. I also thought of the mystery as a form that's very forgiving about being wrong. It allows us to be wrong continually in our guesses. In fact, if we get it right with a mystery, then the drama and the suspense drains out of the novel. So it's about being wrong. It's set among writers and the temptation writers face, because writers, or any creative person, as you know, will work very hard, but the rewards have to be in the process themselves. So I had such fun with such vengeful, wicked, gossiping characters, and then a young person who tries to figure out what really happened at a conference 10 years ago. I'm going to mention just really briefly, I have another novel coming out in June called The Withers, and the sort of pole holding it together is organ trafficking, and a bit of a future world where organs are trafficked, people are hunted for their organs. But it sounds so grim, but at the same time, you know, as with all of our work, there's a sense of a kind of love and friendship and respect for others that undergirds the drama.
And again, Kate Brandis, and I'm going to be, I have 2 books out that I'm going to be reading from Stone Creek, which is my most recent book. Just before I talk about the book, I will just say that I'm finishing Wrongful. I have just I think 1 more chapter to go, so it's a delightful, it's a joy to read, and so funny in so many ways also, so great stuff. And I'm about to read Zigzag Girl, that's next on my list, but I will say that Ruth and I met, I think this is true, because we've known each other for a long time, but Ruth and I met at a writer's retreat called Highlights, which is up in Homestead, Pennsylvania, where people will go and do creative writing on their own. You know, you stay in a little cabin, but you get to have meals together with other writers you don't know, and I'm pretty sure we met there. Yes. And we've seen each other there and other places many times over, but several years ago now, Ruth read a section of Zigzag Girl, and we were in a big group, all kinds of writers sitting around, and it was just absolutely riveting. And I know you've worked on it plenty since then. And I've read an early, manuscript of it, and I also will just say that I read a scene where there's a magic show scene that was just so vivid and amazing. So I really hope you'll pick up a copy, because it's really, I can't wait to read the new version. So, yeah.
I just want to say one thing before you introduce yourself. I'm so honored and so thrilled to be here with these two. This is so kind and so generous and so typical of both Lee and Kate to be sharing their, not just, to me, one of the things to me that was the most exciting about writing Zigzag Girl was the female magicians that I created, that have form a sisterhood. Mm-hmm. And they fight together, they work together. And to me, this is a kind of sisterhood of women writers, that are just working together, always helping each other, supporting each other. This is the way it should be. So I'm just so happy and so grateful to both of you, two wonderful writers. I've read both of these mysteries. I highly recommend both of them. Wrongful, I just want to say, sorry for not putting that, but these are things they're in my heart, and I really just want to say. I remember I used to teach seminars on Philip Roth, and one of my favorite quotes from his was when he said, something I'll paraphrase, the job of a human being is to get things wrong. And then to get them wrong again, and to just keep getting things wrong. That's our goal. That's our job as a human being. And I kept thinking of that reading Wrongful. But what I loved most in your book was the idea of the mystery behind the mystery. Which it's a quote from you, the mystery behind the mystery. That's very much what magic is about. It's never just the magic, it's the magic behind the magic. What is, if somebody breaks out of a sawing box, what does it really mean? There's a deeper, darker meaning, I think. And with Stone Creek, there's so much empathy and so much, and I thought one of the great ways that Kate built suspense is interweaving past and present. Two different timelines that interweave, that work on each other, that increase the tension and suspense. So again, it's deceptively quiet. It's not really a quiet book at all, I didn't think. It's got all these dark waters sort of running through it. So anyway, thank you both, and thank you all for coming. This is very special to me. So.
Yeah. So I'll just share a tiny bit of kind of what the story is about. It is, as Ruth said, told in two timelines. In the main character her name is Tilly Stone, and in the first timeline she's 13, and she lives with her father, Frank Stone, and basically from infancy till she's 13, she's been with her father. They've been on the run. Her father is very influenced by Ted Kaczynski and his writings, and he's an eco-terrorist, so he is sort of fixated on blowing up all these dams. And so he's a fugitive and wanted by the FBI, and so they move around a lot. They sort of live on the fringe of society. So she's been to the library. She can act normally in a group, but she doesn't belong there. And her entire worldview is shaped by her father. So it's everything that he believes. That's all that she knows. And in the story, in that first timeline, she the thing that she wants most in the world is to have a home and to just live a normal life. And so Frank, her dad, gives her this promise in the very beginning of the book. And they move to where he's from, a place called Cottersville. Stone Creek runs through Cottersville. They are very happy for a while. They still live in the woods. Cottersville is here. They live up on the mountain, so she's still sort of living in the same way. But she's promised that she's going to be able to get to this, go to school and all these things. And then her father disappears. He does leave her a note that he's going to be coming back when he turns 50, so that would be 17 years in the future. And so the other timeline is when she is 30, Tilly, her father's 50, and he returns. And the mystery part is that she has no idea why he left, and there's also some deaths that he might be responsible for. So there's a lot of intrigue, I guess, in that way. So that's a summary. Yeah. So we're going to do a tiny reading. Is that good?
Yeah, sure.
So we'll just do 2 minutes-ish each, and then we'll do some questions. And we would love to hear your questions too. So think about what you might have there.
All right. So I'm going to read two minutes from the beginning of the book. There is a little prologue before. I won't go there. But this is in Atlantic City, Wednesday, October 17. 9 minutes to the finale. Hand me a flower, and I'll transform it into a dove. Shoot me from a cannon, and I'll come out smiling. But lock me in the box and saw me in half, and I'll scream bloody murder. Unheard of for a moon, a member of America's most famous magic family, to be terrified of that creaky old standard, the sawing box. But you're hearing it now. In exactly 9 minutes, Charlie, our production manager, and Van, my friend and co-star, are supposed to reenact the famous Sawing a Woman in Half illusion as it was performed by Magnificent Morelli and his assistant Cleo West in this theater during World War II. The classic poster hangs in the dressing room. A man with slick black hair and a thin mustache gesturing to a pretty strawberry blonde who holds a Statue of Liberty torch. Between them is the infamous sawing box. Black letters slash across the top of the poster. Magnificent Morelli, man of mystery. At the bottom, Knightley in the Scarlet Room, world-famous Atlantic City boardwalk. There's one problem. Van should have been here 2 hours ago. But she still hasn't shown up, so Charlie will saw me in half, in Cleo's original sawing box. This is not the contemporary sleek or transparent sawing box you see on a Vegas stage, but the real thing, pure old school, a deep, long wooden container that resembles a coffin. No openings for head or feet, no clamps for neck or ankles, the kind of box in which the magician's assistant is completely locked inside, head to toe. If that's not horrifying enough, this is the same box in which Cleo's murderer placed her body. Good publicity for a haunted theater on Halloween, says Charlie. I don't think so.
I already feel claustrophobic. That's just terrific. I'm just going to read, I timed it 2 minutes from chapter 5. At this point, the body of a novelist has been discovered, and Geneva Finch, who's the primary character in the novel, a young woman, we'll hear what's happening with her. Because she was one of the last persons to see Mira Wallace alive, perhaps the very last, it was suspected, Geneva Finch sat on the bottom bunk in her room at the Convention Center Hotel answering questions. If you try to look innocent, you look guilty. It's like trying not to appear insane. That's obvious. Everyone says that. And she couldn't stop her hands from jumping. Of course, the police only wanted to secure as much information as they could about Mira Wallace's state of mind, they claimed. She seemed fine. She was kind to me. She must have been backpacking. She had a backpack. She said she had something she needed to do in the woods. She wanted me to leave. The smirk from the policewoman. And did that make you angry that she wanted you to leave her alone? And Geneva's muddy answer, I admired her. I came just to see her at the festival. I didn't care about the others, only her. The officer, you're her biggest fan? I've read all of Mira Wallace's novels. I wouldn't hurt her. The other officer, did anyone say you should hurt her? The police officers suspected Geneva, didn't they? Weren't they right to suspect her? She would suspect herself. A local boy tromping through the woods had found the body with rocks around it and didn't disturb the scene. He was cleared instantly. Locals spoke for him. Even the Catholic priest vouched for him. The boy worked for the diocese. Most likely, Mira Wallace died in a freak accident, falling rocks. A simple explanation exists for most things. That made sense, didn't it? Probably plenty of people at the festival were questioned, but Geneva came forward first and admitted she saw Mira Wallace after everyone else said she vanished, which meant she kept reminding herself she was the last other than the murderer, if there was a murderer, and it wasn't a freak accident. How many times did Geneva Finch try to convince herself that Mira Wallace's death was an accident? Every day for 10 years.
Okay, I'm going to read a little section. This is in the very beginning of the book, and this is when Tilly is young, 13, and her father, Frank, has just told her that they're going to move, to settle into a new home, which is exactly what she wants. Settle down and stay put for once. And they're going to blow up their last dam. So this is that scene. So Frank switched off the headlights and drove the last mile or so in the dark, coming to a stop next to the Umber Dam. They sat waiting to make sure they hadn't been followed. But Tilly was eager to get this job done so they could start this new life. We haven't seen a soul here over the last 3 days of scouting around. We aren't going to see anyone now, not in the middle of the night. Frank says, I just don't want anyone to get Tilly hurt, I know, but no one's out here. Fine. Frank thumbed over his shoulder at the box in the back of the truck. You're up then. She got out and double-checked that each stick of dynamite was tied with a primer cord and the fuse blasting cap was taped correctly. Any prints or other trace she left on bomb material couldn't be linked to them. She'd been born at home since Frank hated Big Pharma. There was no birth certificate, no records of any kind. She was no one to the government, and they were kept safe this way. So safe, Tilly now realized. They could live in Cottersville and no one would know the difference. She wrestled the box out of the truck bed and, struggling under its weight, carried it to the edge of the dam, then set the charges. She unspooled the fuse as she walked back toward the truck. On a tree close to the dam, she spray painted the trunk with the same yellow bird insignia on Frank's jacket, taking time to make sure the wings tapered and spread at the edges so it photographed well when the news crews showed up later. Back at the truck, she pulled a lighter from her shirt pocket, flicked it, and held the flame to the fuse, maybe for the last time. When the burn crept steadily along the fuse, making its way toward the box, Tilly climbed into the truck and they drove off. The firebomb behind them lit the night in one sudden white flash so bright it burned her eyes. The truck jumped with the thud of the explosion, and her forehead hit the rear cab window hard enough to bruise. She knew from experience to keep more distance between her head and the glass, but she was so preoccupied thinking about Cottersville. Down the road, the smell of smoke became as faint as the sirens in the distance, and above them, the stars shone bright. All right, so I have questions here, but do any of you have a question before I begin?
I'm curious, I know Kate, and I'm getting to know Ruth. You both are very nice and kind people. And where does this darkness, where does this darkness come from? I find that really curious. It's like usually they say, write what you know. It's like, what's the mystery behind this mystery?
You go ahead.
Well, I mean, I've gotten this question before. My first book, which is called The Promise of Pearson Orchard, the main character in that book it's a man, and he really likes to beat people up. Like, that's his, he's a fighter, without gloves, or they just get in a barn and they fight, and he does is the way he deals with his emotions, because he can't deal with his emotions. And people are always like, you seem so nice, why would you? I don't know. I've always been really, I think things are not black and white, they're gray, and people are dark and light at the same time, and I want to show that in my character. So I guess that's probably the most straightforward answer I could give. I don't know what I know you've talked about being sort of drawn to these places like Atlantic City and
The Pine Barrens.
Pine Barrens, yeah.
I think I don't know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a detective, so I was always looking for mysteries and finding them and creating them, even, like I still remember the excitement when I found a key on the sidewalk one day. I was sure it was a sign for me. And I thought, this key opens a door somewhere. I have to find where it goes. And I'd imagine stories about our neighbors, or about everybody, my schoolmates. I was always doing this. So, and many of those stories were kind of dark, I think. I always imagine that people had very dark histories behind closed doors. Sometimes I think I was probably right. But I love mysteries, and I'm drawn to that. And I think magic does the same thing, and places like the Pine Barrens that seem to hold memories, seem to hold dark memories inside. I'm always attracted to that, but at the same time, I'm also attracted to light, and I want that hope. So it's this idea I've talked about before and written about, that I think Zigzag Girl is a noir story, but with hope. And that's the kind of writing I think I go for the most. I'm not closing my eyes to the noir and darkness of the world, but I want to be able to see light at the end. I don't think light alone is good. I don't think darkness alone is good. I think we have to see, like Kate was saying, kind of the gray to work. Will you be afraid to hang out with me now? Just wondering.
Do you
Want to
want to
answer
add
that?
I guess I'm thinking I'm just not a nice person. But I guess, you know, when I wrote Wrongful, it took me forever to figure out who did it. You know, I kind of give it away that someone did something, as in most mysteries. But, you know, I had to figure out what are the reasons. And thinking about that, I always think, you know, within all our novels, people have their reasons. And sometimes the reasons are very quirky, and in this book particularly, self-satisfying and self-aggrandizing, but they're very human. And recognizing that part, I think, is almost part of the job somehow in a mystery. I think of all novels in some ways. I'm often quoting Kate Rakulia, another mutual friend, who says that all novels are mysteries. They're all, in a sense, revealing a secret. And I always think of your characters as kind of mysteries within mysteries. So, you know, even the fact that sometimes people, when they think they're doing something good, the outcome can lead to evil, despite our best intentions. So I think touching upon that, these negatives in consciousness, it gives the work a kind of energy. It gives it a kind of tension in whatever kind of work. But there is something about going deep, as you guys do, that is very freeing somehow. And I think that very often in mysteries, there's justice, but not always. And I always think as long as there's clarity in the end, then a mystery is somehow doing its job, because the world is unbalanced, and then how do we find that balance somehow through working through the mystery and working through a character who may need to learn more self-trust, or may need to touch his or her own wounds in order to recognize who the villain is, because generally, I think, you know, Ruth has talked about this in another session about the villain often has a wound that matches the wound of a primary character.
Other questions? Yeah.
Ruth, you know, your initiation into the world of magic, you know, interested in that, and what did you find most surprising or unexpected in the training that you went through?
I think that the fact that they work so hard at their craft, it is a craft, and they work years and years. Gillette of Penn, you know, Penn Gillette of Penn and Teller said once that magic is the art where nobody would ever believe how hard we work at it. It's supposed to look effortless, but there are years and years and hours of just painstaking, you know, working it from every possible angle. I love the way they think. I found myself enchanted from the very beginning. They called me the human at first because I was and I got very lucky to be able to be invited in this inner circle. But as a human, you know, I would watch them and realize, not just did they think outside the box. For them, there was no box. There was no limit. When I came up with some of the ideas for illusions that I created for my characters, which was some of the most fun I had writing this book, I talked to a magician I knew and said, I'm really worried that these will not be able to work. Like, they couldn't happen in real life. He said, don't worry about it, Ruth. If you can imagine it, we can make it happen. And that was so freeing to me. That was like an open door. And so everything that I learned from them helped me, not just in writing a mystery, but in writing in general. I think I look at writing differently now. They opened doors in my mind, and I'm still friends with many of them, you know, and I follow all their things, and I just keep learning from them. I think that's, and the great ones, there's a wisdom and a generosity in them. They really want to create moments of wonder in the world. And if that isn't the most human thing, you know, to me it's just one of the most human arts there is, to want to create moments of wonder that will transform the viewer. And so when I was writing this, I kept thinking of it as a magic act in a way, hoping that I can create moments of wonder that at the end, the reader will feel the way you do after a great magic illusion, that not just has the magician transformed the world a little, but you have been transformed through the experience of watching the magic or reading this story. So.
Yeah.
I was curious, hearing you talk about the dark and the light side and the way that, you know, very nice people can have these very scary, evil characters and things like that. It makes me think of the dream work that I do in my creative process. And I wondered, do any of you write down your dreams? You remember dreams? Did they play a role in your creative process? Do you ever dream about your characters while you're working on the book? It seems like the world of dreams and the world of magic have a lot in common, so I wondered what you thought about that.
I have sometimes when I'm dreaming, I'm writing. It's really weird. I mean, I'm in the dream and I'm writing and nothing is happening, but I'm just doodling along. But I do have sometimes the characters kind of come in the dream. So I find at a certain point in writing that and I've heard other writers talk about this, the world starts cooperating and you start seeing characters' names in signs, or you start somehow recognizing people who look like the characters. So there is a sense, and maybe because your mind is so flooded with this work you're doing, that you feel less alone. So sometimes the dreams do cooperate, or sometimes I'll give characters little moments of dreams that help me. Sometimes I excise them because I think, oh, this maybe tells a little too much, but they help orient me to what will happen next within the manuscript.
Well, I think what Lee started saying there with, you know, I for sure, as I work on something and as I get closer to finishing it, which might still take 2 years, but I start to see things in my world that feel like, that inform whatever I'm writing. Like, oh, you know, I might see a poster or something and suddenly it's in the book. You know what I mean? It like, because maybe I understand what the story's about more, and so I start to recognize things. But I also think, just on a subconscious level, the way I get all my best ideas are I go for a walk. So I'm a big walker. You know, I can walk a very long way every day. But if I'm having a story problem, that's what I do. I go for a walk, and I have like voice notes. So I'm there out on the road talking to myself. But I've solved all, I would say, all story problems in that way. So yeah.
I agree with both of you. Walking also helps me find answers, but also dreams a lot. I get answers. Sometimes I'll even now consciously ask myself a question before I go to sleep, because if I'm puzzling over something, and very often, surprisingly often, I'll wake up with the answer. And I have to write it immediately, you know, because it just comes like it was a key I was missing to a puzzle or something. But also sometimes, just in the way that I really feel the world conspires to help you when you're really, when you're raw, you know, like you're sort of open to the world. Everything, you're like a sponge absorbing everything that comes in. The world gives you signs, and sometimes you'll just see a literal sign, or go to a place and something wakes up in your imagination and you realize, wow, this is what I needed for the story. That this comes here, or that person would have lived here, or this would have happened. So I think it's like an intense awareness of the world around you that happens.
Yeah.
Jung would call it a synchronicity,
Yes.
where you're so immersed in that kind of that collective space that you know, collective unconscious and interconnectedness starts to manifest itself in your creative life. And I agree, that's one of the big rewards of doing creative work, is the way that it connects you with that interconnected place. It's kind of that right brain place, I guess.
Yeah.
The imagination. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
really interesting.
Other questions, Jimmy?
Is writing a mystery very different from writing any other genre? Because I would assume you need to have a lot more answers before, when you start. Lee, you said that you finally figured out who did what, right? How does that process work compared to your other types of genre?
Well, it is different, and I think, and right now I'm struggling with a manuscript. It has a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law in different chapters, and they get along well and everything in the manuscript, but I keep thinking, it needs more attention. I keep thinking somebody should die. But, there's something about the murder. I mean, there's that galvanizing incident of injustice or death that sort of means that you're moving in a kind of direction. So I think that that helped me somehow to put together this manuscript and all. I did it. I once read that Agatha Christie did not know who did the murder. And I thought, oh, that makes me feel wonderful. And then I read that was totally wrong, and that she always knew. But there is something about it. It's not more mechanistic, because I think mysteries, if they're going to work, somehow they have to work because they're looking at human behavior, and they have to keep surprising the writer in one way or another. Even those who plan out their mysteries, I think to give yourself the kind of energy to complete the plot, you'd have to surprise yourself at a lot of corners. So it does feel, though, different than other writing that I've done in some ways. I used to think when I was publishing short stories primarily, I thought I could never kill a person. And then I reread the stories and I thought I could call this book Everybody Dies, But I think that I think the sense of mortality is so much in this. The book directly before Wrongful was a comic book. I mean, a comical book, Tabitha Get Up. But even within that book, I think there are 70, when I checked it, about 70 times it says death or dying. And so there's that sense, I think, even with comedy's a little like mysteries to my mind, because often you're taking a person who doesn't seem to be quite right for the circumstances and putting them in a really difficult situation, and they're going to help lead the reader through toward some sort of light in the end. So it does feel different, because I don't always know with some of the other work I'm doing if there will be that sort of light in the end for it. But it's almost with a mystery, you can do all sorts of mysteries, but there's almost a pact sometimes that somehow you will lead someone at least toward understanding, if not justice. So what I'm doing now, I really mean it with this mother-in-law, daughter-in-law story. I'll be brief. I keep thinking, like, how can I raise the stakes? And boy, does murder raise the stakes. Does violence raise the stakes? And so I'm trying to think of other ways to raise the stakes. It feels different for me to have a corpse in a book. I've since written a couple of other manuscripts, and once again there's that kind of horror, but it does feel very different for me. Each of the genres, I think, calls out, it's almost like you're given a different sense facility. It calls out another way of looking at the world. So I think the particular lens of a mystery, the mystery is so foregrounded that it does call out different reserves of strength.
Listening to you, I just remembered that the very first short story I wrote when I was a teenager had 16 murders in it. Seriously. I set it in Budapest, where I'd never been. 16 people got murdered. I'd give anything to find that story today. I have no idea why, what. All I remember is that I told a friend about it, and she was like horrified. What? What? Why did you write a story with 16 murders? So I guess I haven't moved back. You know? I mean, I've written literary, comic, mystery, poetry, screenplays. I've written all kinds of things too, but I don't feel that they work differently with me. The only thing that was very different with this was that when the story really came to me was one day in the Pine Barrens, which are haunted. You know, if you've ever watched The Sopranos or heard about, you know, bodies in the swamps and all kinds of things, dark secrets, a place you go to bury bodies and to lose yourself, to get lost. And I was there in another haunted place, the graveyard supposedly where the Jersey Devil is buried. And if you know, have you heard of the Jersey Devil? He haunts, you know, haunts the Pine Barrens, a sort of mythic figure that comes out every 50 years and haunts them. But his resting place in between is in this graveyard. And I was there at night, and I stood there, and I remember feeling something rising from the ground, and I just knew the killer is here, you know, something, the killer of my story. I had written about it, but not entered that, I don't want to say too much, but it was there that it took shape. And once I left that place, it was like a dream giving me a sign. And once I left, I wrote like the way you write, like how you dream of writing. You're like in a zone, and I just knew I had the key to the story. It came from that, but it was, you know, murder and darkness, but it was a mystery to me. I wasn't aware of it till then, and that just, I had to come back and rewrite all sorts of things to be able to make it all make sense.
So I'm working on a new book now, which is a murder mystery. I would not say this is not a murder mystery. This is more of a mystery adjacent mystery. But and I will say that I'm a scientist by day. Like, I don't, you know, the creative writing came later in my life. So I'm a very logical minded person. So my first novel, I was like, oh, I'll make a spreadsheet, you know, and scene 1, scene 2, A, B, C, D, you know, like, but what I learned from that was that I needed to do that less the second time around, and in my third novel, where it is a murder mystery, I'm doing that even less. I don't, you know, I have a first draft now, so now I know, I think, who the killer is, but like I didn't know, and I didn't want to plot it out. I realized that in order for the story to kind of have life and actually fly, I think of it as somehow a flying thing. In order for it to have a lift, it will not do that if I overthink it in the beginning. At least for me, this is just my process that I've learned. So I've had to undo, like, take the logically brained person out of my head and just go with the instinctual side of myself, which was, you know, I've had to learn to do that over time. So I just don't think about it too much, and it works out better. Yeah.
I was just like, it just occurred to me that I guess with
The Jersey Devil.
yeah.
And I knew I shouldn't bring him up. It's always a risk when I mention him.
I guess it occurred to me something about mysteries is that you have a cast. Like you could write a novel and it would be one person communing with the kitchen window, but you have to have have a cast, because you have to have suspects. And that's what makes, to my mind, a particular mystery where there's an injustice really interesting, because there have to be multiple people, and you have to even suspect the primary character, or, I think in some ways the novel Wrongful is a homage to Agatha Christie, and remember the murder of Peter Ackroyd, so even the narrator can be the murderer, so everyone can be suspected. So I think mysteries, they really play upon trust. Who can we trust in the world? Who can we suspect? And even ourselves, we may be the murderer.
Yeah, that's right. And even another thing about mysteries that I think is so fascinating is that every mystery begins with a disruption in the world. Something goes wrong. The ordinary cover of life, ordinary everyday life, the kind of social lies that we live with, something's shattered, something cracks or breaks, and there's an opening, a disruption in the surface, and that is the heart of the mystery. Even if there's not a murder, something has changed and opened secrets, things that have been buried for years. It's like, and then the whole entire novel is a process of trying to get back to that, the original ordinary world, but it will never go back. It can never go back as it was. It has to be changed somehow. And it's also, I think, a reflection of society. I used to teach, when I was at Lehigh, I taught courses on the mystery. And one of the most fascinating things is how it's a reflection of our society. You can highlight a problem, whether it's racism or it's entertaining. It's an entertaining thing, but it's also holds up a mirror to society and culture and gives you a way to look at it in a very, suspenseful manner, I think.
We have time for one more question, which I can ask, but does anybody have a question? Okay, I'm gonna ask a bit of a fun-ish, I think will be a fun question. What's the strangest research you've ever done for your mystery or other strangest research?
Let's see. Well, for Wrongful, it was a lot of lived research in going to festivals and conferences with writers. But I guess along with that, it was a research on priests, because there's a former Catholic priest within the novel, and I had to figure out, I was raised in mass every morning and all, but I needed to know more about priests, so I did a lot of research on priests for the novel The Withers that comes out in June. I had to do a lot of research on organ trafficking. The World Health Organization estimates that perhaps as much as 20% of organs are garnered illegally. They're harvested illegally, so it's horrific. So the book is set in a future world, but I had to kind of imagine organ trafficking, and I also had to look at organ transplants and the miracle, the wonderful things that happen through organ transplants, and about rates of rejection as well too. So priests and organ trafficking were probably my main area.
All right. Well, I got sawed in half in a box, sawing box. That was my most, I think, getting in a box and having a magician saw me in half with a sword was the strangest research I did. I think that's I was also sawed in thirds for the Zigzag Girl, the actual Zigzag Girl illusion. And as Lee had mentioned, I was locked in a straitjacket, a regulations straitjacket. This is no tricks, no secret way out. I had to figure out how to escape from it myself. And I was in front of 30 male magicians watching me. And it's a scary thing to be locked in I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience, but the canvas is very rough and there are straps and leather things and you're locked in and tied, and as you're trying to get yourself out, I mean, the sleeves are this long and everything is wound around you, you're completely trapped and trying to get it over. There was a moment when I was suffocating because I got it over my head, but I couldn't move anything else, and I was completely locked in place. And that was a moment when I thought, have I carried research too far? I really thought, well, they're gonna, why? People might ask, well, why is she here? Why is she doing this? But I managed to figure it out, and I did get out, and I just threw that straitjacket to the ground. So these were,
If you
I
had
think,
not figured it out, what would plan B have been?
good question. The magicians were not helping me. They were just sort of there watching, and they were sort of, I think, probably laughing a little bit inside. Let's see what she can do, let's see if she can do it. And the magician, who was the one organizing this thing, I asked him, can you help me a little? He said, just remember, it's a story. This was his advice to me. It's a story. Remember the story. Don't let the story terrify you. You're in charge. It's a story. So while I was doing this, I was thinking, what is the story of this woman who has willingly, voluntarily gotten locked in a straitjacket in a weird workshop basement filled with magicians? No one else I knew was there. And what is that story? And I think maybe after that, I started trying, once I did get out, I just thought, well, maybe it's a story of breaking free, of breaking free from it. Because writing this book and studying magic was a form of breaking free for me, finding a new freedom in my life, which I think I've had since then. It was breaking free, which a lot of magic is, so, yeah.
Excellent. So I want to close because we have books over there and cake and wine and champagne and all kinds of nice things just in the next room. And we're here for however long you want to stay and listen and chit chat. So thank you for coming.